and Hebrew and studying those languages. And Hebrew sort of led naturally into Arabic. I was also interested in student loan repayment. I owed, upwards of $40,000 in student loans, which the Army promised to repay. The option available to me was to get a secret clearance and become an interrogator. And I agreed. This was pre-9/11. I didn't really expect I'd have to interrogate someone, or imagined if I did, it would have been in a conventional war where things would have been very different.
I found out in April of 2003 by a phone call. He said, well, the good news is, congratulations, you've been selected for promotion to Brigadier General. I said, well, that's good news. What could possibly be the bad news? And he said, well, the bad news is your unit, you'll be commanding, assisting the prisons experts with the restoration of prisons for all of Iraq. And they're already deployed. And I said, well, can I go? And there was just a second of silence on the other end of the telephone, and he said, you want to go?
I received a telephone call from a Mr. Saleh. He said, can you help me? He said, the Americans took my money and they hurt me very bad. And I just came from Abu Ghraib. He told me of one incident where he was stripped nude, and they tied a rope to his penis with 7 or 8 other men, and then they would, these were American personnel, he's telling me, and they would push one man, and all of them would fall, and they'd be joking and laughing and mocking him. I would ask him, who was doing this to you, Mr. Saleh? And he would say, well, there were 2 types of people. One was dressed some type of military personnel wearing the army. And then the other type would be in civilian clothing. I go, what do you mean civilian clothing? He goes, like normal pants, like any normal pants and a normal shirt. So that's the first time when it struck me that there's another element being involved here in Abu Ghraib, another type of person there.
كان يوم أحد. يوم الاثنين كانت حالة من الفوضى ومن الإجراءات الأمنية الشديدة. يوم الثلاثاء اللي هو يوم اعتقالي ذهبت إلى عملي، مو عملي أنا، يعني كنا في موقع عمل في منطقة الحصوة، فأني أعمل في مجال الكهرباء. تم نقلي إلى سجن أبو غريب في بداية عام 2004 باليوم الأول من الشهر الأول لعام 2004. كان أكو شخص مدني واقف بيتأمر، يعني ياخذون أوامرهم من عنده اللي هم الشركات الأمنية. أدخلوني إلى الزنزانة، كبلوني، وتم خلع ملابسي بالقوة. يعني أسلوب من أساليبهم أنه القبض التناسلي للرجل يلفون عليه حبل ويجروه هيك مثل عملية الخنق. شنو الغاية من عندها؟ شنو هاي العبرة تضربون إياها اللي أنا هسه حاليا حتى أطفال مدى يصيرون عندي؟ شنو الداعي لأنه جيش يستعين بشركات أمنية مدنية للتحقيق مع معتقلين؟ بس أنا أقول لك هاي الشركتين مؤكدة، شركة تايتن وشركة CI.
When I saw the photographs for the first time, and I said to the commander of the Criminal Investigation Division, who was showing them to me, I said, why are the translators around the prisoners? Why are the translators in the cell block? And he said, ma'am, those aren't translators, those are khaki interrogators.
Khaki was hired by the Department of Interior out of a little town in Arizona called Sierra Vista, and they were hired to do database work. And that contract, which was sort of a blanket contract that allowed them to do a whole bunch of different things, was used to do interrogation in Abu Ghraib. So what ostensibly was a contract to do clerical work or IT work turned out to be getting information not from a computer but from human beings in a notorious prison in Iraq. At the time of the scandals in the spring of 2004, roughly 50% of the interrogators were private contractors.
This amendment, Madam President, attempts to address what I believe is a very legitimate and serious concern that have come to light in recent days with respect to the use of, or misuse of, contractors in the treatment of detainees in Iraq. Quite simply, Madam President, this amendment would prohibit the use of contractors in interrogations of prisoners and in offensive military operations.
It just seems to me abundantly clear that we cannot hire private contractors to perform a function as inherently governmental, inherently sensitive, indeed inherently explosive, and for which there must be accountability, as is the interrogation of prisoners.
Corporations exist to make a profit, and when they're hired to do jobs, whether it's the provision of water or the interrogation of prisoners, their job is to get as much work as possible and make as much profit as possible. Now, that doesn't work in the field of intelligence, period.
You do not put personnel who do not have allegiance and 100% loyalty to America, you do not put them in sensitive key government activities like military intelligence gathering.
It creates a conflict too, because we were uncertain. We knew what our chain of command was. That was very clear, and we were forced to memorize it and follow it. But what's the khaki chain of command?
These rules, you're going to follow them, but we're not going to spend that much time making sure that you're going to follow them. And if I don't know about what's going on, then I can, have plausible deniability.
The contractor is safely in an office in the United States somewhere. So no direct supervision. And to just simply say, well, I guess they got out of control. I don't know where they were taking their instructions from. It seems to excuse all of them.
I have reproduced an excerpt from the job posting as it was reprinted in the Washington Post on May 10th on the poster here behind me. And let me read it for you. It says, under minimal supervision, will assist, and goes on. Key words, under minimal supervision.
In 2003, the Pentagon essentially panicked, and a very desperate Secretary of Defense did whatever he had to do very, very quickly to try to get more intelligence. If that meant running out and hiring a bunch of contractors who didn't know what they were doing and putting them wrongly into the chain of command of military intelligence, that's what they did. They were desperate.
The contracting business in Iraq is very, very lucrative.
There was so much money being given away over there to contractors. I mean, there were jobs that didn't even need to be there. We'd go into the tent to use our internet, and the woman who would put my name down to assign me to a computer would be a civilian contractor who was making 6 figures to be over there. Why is she there? Why are we paying this woman to do this?
They threw so much money at these people they can't refuse. I mean, if you're a mechanic, you're making like 20 or 30,000. Someone offers you 100,000 a year tax-free to go to Iraq, and that's hard. I think that's really hard to refuse.
They would very often sit down with soldiers, particularly from Reserve or National Guard, and say, hey man, what are you making, $3,000 a month over here? I make that in a week.
You would talk about how, in 8 more months, I'm going to be out of here and I'm going to be making 140 grand.
It certainly affected retention, because I don't know why any military person would re-enlist to do the same job when they could get out of the military and make 6 times the money and do the same job.
There was a little phrase that we threw around, food for freedom, that if you wanted to get paid more, you should start eating more so that you'd get booted out for being overweight. And it's an honorable discharge, and it would boost your pay, your net worth by about 5 times if you were to do such a thing, and it worked.
جو علينا الامريكان بال11:30 بالليل واخذوني انا وابني، فابني دا يقول لهم هذه امي، فاجا الامريكي جرني من ايدي حق قال لي جو سكو هيك حي صح، فقال لي اعترفي، اذا ما تعترفين على الارهابيين اللي وياك راح اوديك مكان يعتدون عليك ويلعبون بيش طوبه الامريكان، فاحسن لك احكي انت وابنك.
I was